Ready. Play.
Hello once again, I'm with Shane Liyanage. I've been chatting to him on and off or from time to time over the past 12 months, and fingers crossed I'm pronouncing his name right after all. Am I doing okay with that, Shane?
Yeah, you're doing fine, mate. Thanks for having me on. Great to be back, and yeah, you're looking well as well.
And good circumstances, Shane, because as we were just chatting before going on air, that's 7 slams. Is that 7 slams since you set up your company?
No, it's the last in the last 7. Okay. Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to work with 2 players that have been either in the final or eventually the champion.
Yes, exactly. And the one occasion that didn't happen, it was super close. Maybe we'll come to that later, but let's talk about obviously the last sort of 48, 72 hours, but also the last 2 weeks, which your body of work obviously will be heavily involved in. But let's just focus on the last 48 hours. How's it been as a member of a Grand Slamming winning machine, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, firstly, very, very happy for Aryna. She's put in the work, not only the last 2 weeks, but across a number of years, and yeah, just to see her get the reward for all that effort is definitely something I'm very happy to have played a small part in as well. But yeah, just really happy for her because I think you've obviously seen on the Netflix show, and she said it before as well. It was one of the things that she had told her dad, that she'd love to have a couple of slams by the age of 25. So just for her to tick that off within that time frame is just something a little special as well.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think I've come across her in press conferences a few times, and she's extremely charming and a lot of fun. And we see the demeanor, of course, on court and how desperate she is to win, but away from it. I remember in Madrid, for example, just a random moment last year, just after she won the title there. There was one of these sort of cameras was put in her face, just like a cell phone camera, but by the media of Madrid. They were doing one of these off the cuff things, and they said, "Say something for social media," and she was like, "Oh, I don't know, vamos." She did, and everyone this is after the press conference, and everyone in the press room laughed, and it was a spontaneous, natural thing that Aryna comes across so well, and I guess as a part of her, a team, if you like, you do get to come across this part of her personality too.
Yeah, she's a very, very real person. You probably saw that in the trophy presentation and a number of her press conferences. I think she doesn't really hide what she wants to say, and she has a way of charming people with just the honesty, and she has a funny sense of humor, a little bit quirky, but she's like that off the court, and she's very, I would say, genuine to all her team members, the supporters. But yeah, on the court, she's a fierce competitor. She'll battle. She'll fight hard. A number of matches, not so much this summer, but a number of matches in the past. She's looked down and out, but she'll fight to the end. I think like a great example is that Madison Keys at the US Open. She was really down and out, but she just hung in there and managed to turn around. And I think she's just got an incredible fighting spirit on the court. But yeah, off the court, she's a very, very, very genuine, great human being.
Shane, which of the matches, and let's go over this sort of 18, 20-month period that we've sort of honed in on since the summer of 2022, is that, I guess, something like that? Yeah, so obviously you had Ons Jabeur in the US Open final there, but looking at Aryna, and we can look at other players later. Which match would you say really gave you the greatest pleasure, where there was like the data, the information, the plan, it was executed, and just everything was a dream, if you like?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I would say. I mean, definitely this Australian Open, the semi-final with Coco. I know the coach, Aryna's coach Anton Dubrov, and I went back and forth. We looked at a lot of vision, we looked at a lot of data, we looked at a lot of, I guess, permutations of things that could happen. And I thought the plan was pretty clear, what we came up with, and Aryna executed really well and adjusted as well when Coco made some adjustments. So that one gave me a lot of satisfaction because I felt that was a really a danger match, a tough opponent that had, I guess, the recent victory in New York. Yeah, it was great. That one gave me a lot of satisfaction. I think with Ons as well, there's been a few matches. I think her win against Rybakina at Wimbledon was one that I take a lot of pride in, given 12 months earlier she'd lost the final, and Elena, for a lot of people at that stage, was almost the favourite to win Wimbledon. So yeah, that was one, and yeah, there's probably a scattering of other great matches. I think Aryna's win over Iga in Madrid as well. We've done a lot of preparation for that post, I think, playing in the Stuttgart final the week before. So I know the coach and I had a lot of back and forth coming up with a plan for Madrid. And yeah, it was that one as well. It was a great win.
So even when you're not on site or on the same continent, I guess, Shane, you're still getting your data through pretty clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're with those bigger players, we've got access to the level 3 sort of Hawkeye electronic line calling system data, and then we run it through our system, and we produce reports. But there's always back and forth. I would say there would have been close to 10 voice messages back and forth with myself and Anton before that Madrid final, just looking at different patterns, different things that Iga was doing, chatting about, I guess, the altitude and why the match would be different from the week before, but also trying to draw some inferences as well from that previous match. So yeah, I think we're very active, and then even during the match as well, I'd like to be awake and occasionally, even when I'm not in the box there, I'll get messages from either Anton or someone in the team just asking some questions on what's happening in the match. So they're getting answers from me almost real time as well, whether I'm in the box or not in the box. So yeah, I'd like to think, whether I'm there or not, that there's still some involvement in the match itself.
I'm glad you mentioned the Coco match, because there's been 2 epic matches between them, I would argue, in the last 6 months, and with 2 different results. So you said that this one gave you a lot of pride, and you're very pleased with how things panned out in terms of what you knew before and how that was executed. How would you say that, without giving too much away, how would you say that was possibly different, therefore, to the final in September of last year?
Yeah, I think in both matches, Aryna started quite well, aggressive, but Coco adapted, and she had, even in that semi-final, she had a period where she was definitely the more dominant player, and she even served for it, and yeah, we just had to. Aryna just had to hold her composure and stick to a certain pattern of play, and change a couple of things based on what Coco had changed, and I think she was more aware of it because it had happened at the US Open, and Coco made a similar adjustment here in Melbourne. But yeah, Aryna kind of anticipated it and made the quick adjustment to be able to break back and then yeah, win the tiebreak pretty convincingly. So yeah, it takes. I guess we're proud because we of the, I guess, the learning from that previous match and the growth that we saw, that this time Aryna was able to recognize it. I know we had mentioned that it could happen, but for her to be able to recognize it and then make the adjustments herself was something very pleasing, and something I'm sure Anton, the coach, and the rest of the team will be proud that she was able to adapt in this situation quite well.
Did you get that message to her then during the match? Like at I guess around about 5-4, 5-all, 5-6, something like this. I guess you transmitted something to her to say, look, you need to tweak this because something's going on the other side of the net.
Yeah, it was a bit of both, actually. So Anton was definitely, I was communicating with Anton, and Anton had relayed some messages back to her, but there were some adjustments that she had already started doing, recognizing the momentum that Coco had. So it was quite pleasing. Yes, there was some communication, but she'd already picked up a few things on her own, and I think I'd like to think that was because she had been prepared for it, and they did the work on the practice court as well, knowing that this could happen. But yeah, a bit of both, but very pleasing that Aryna was able to identify some of those things herself.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, do you have players, and it seems like Aryna's pretty much like a sponge with this, but I mean, I often think of across all sports. I'm a huge soccer fan, for example, and one of my sort of heroes in that respect was Sir Alex Ferguson, and he was very wary as a coach not to overload players with too much information. And I guess you have to strike this balance, Shane, between keeping it basic and simple, but you also want to get your message across. Yeah,
definitely, and probably on the sponge comment, I don't think she's always been like that. I don't know. I think in previous podcasts with you, we've talked about, I think, the first year of the relationship, very little communication with me and Aryna, and I would say even the analysis that I did, the reports, the coach probably didn't relay a lot back to her at that stage. They may have reviewed some of the vision stuff that we'd done, but he would keep it to himself. But I think across the years, he's started to drip feed a little bit more and more and more, and she's actually asked some questions as well. So yes, she certainly wasn't I would say a sponge at the start with the data stuff, but over time she's grown confident in using it, and she uses it more. But I'd still say there's still she wouldn't look at everything that I give the coach. Naturally, you should only have, I would say, a clear 3 or 4 points, so 3 or 4 areas that maybe the coach lets her know, and that's what they think about a lot. And then I would think anything else is almost need to know. He might communicate it as the match is going, but we'd still keep it pretty simple. And yeah, that's the same with different players. I've got some players that really love the data side, and even with them, I'm always mindful. Yes, I can give them a lot, and they'll love to learn about it and use it, but they can overthink. So it's actually, even though they want it, it's detrimental to what we're trying to achieve. So I deliberately cut back on what I give them. So it's a fine art. It's I guess that art versus science sort of balance that you've got to manage. The coach has to manage that as well. Yeah, that's the nature of the work.
Could you maybe just sort of explain what did change, whether it was a data thing or something else, but what did change from the 5-2 advantage that she had against Coco, where things were obviously looking very good, and quite quickly from the outside, things seemed to be unraveling a bit to 5-all, and then obviously, as you said, 6-5 with Coco serving and 30 love. There's sort of 2 swings in the match in a way. I mean, actually the second set was super tight, but that first set, there was certainly 2 sort of big swings when it was, 5-2 to 6-5. And then from 6-5, we had another pretty significant swing, whereas you also highlighted it was a comfortable tiebreak in the end.
Yeah, look, I think Coco took some ball speed off her game, and the forehand, which was missing a fair bit at the start. As she did in the US, she was shaping the ball, cross, well, middle line, a little bit maybe middle cross court, but just getting the ball back with a bit more spin, a bit more clearance, and not giving much ball speed. I think she started to do that. She wasn't missing, so yeah, Aryna had to, I guess, adapt to that, and she used a few different things. She moved forward a little bit more at times. She changed the directions. I'm not going to go into all that detail, given I'm sure there's a few more matches between the two coming. But yeah, she definitely that was one of the changes that Coco had made, and I think that similar to the US Open, that allowed her to, yeah, I guess, change the dynamic of the match, and that was the trigger point for, I think, for us to maybe think about changing something as well, to be able to adapt. And I think Aryna did that well. The second set was very tight, as you mentioned. But I think the second set level was higher with both players. There wasn't a drop off until sort of the last couple of games. I think Coco didn't maybe play the best game to get broken. But I thought the level in the second set was quite high. I have to say, Coco started serving unbelievably in the back end of that first set from 2-5. She was serving a number of times over 200. I reckon there was a lot of balls over 190 as well. So she served incredibly. You've got to, it wasn't all, anything that Aryna necessarily did badly. Coco just played exceptional, I thought, from that 2-5 to get it to 5-5 or 6-5 in her favour.
It's quite rare for two players to independently come into a press conference and both of them highlight the exact same thing or the exact same difference, if that's not a contradiction in terms from the New York match and Melbourne, because both of them said, Coco said, I felt that she was playing more aggressively, as in Aryna, and she stayed more aggressive throughout. And Aryna basically said exactly the same, that maybe in New York, I either dropped the intensity or I dropped that level of aggression a little bit at one point, and that was the turning point in New York, but I didn't let that happen here. I mean, it was, different words, but pretty much the same narrative was being said by both players.
Yeah, definitely heard the press conference, and I agree with it as well. I think that's accurate. I also agree. I think Coco had mentioned as well, she thought the match quality was actually better here than it was in New York. So she even said, I know I won in New York, but I think I played better here, which, again, I think that if you look at the way she served, I know there were a couple of double faults, but if you look at the speeds that she was serving, the spots she was hitting, it was pretty incredible. It was unbelievable serving display from her. Serving, mid 190s to 200. It was exceptional, I thought, and then the level was really high in the second set as well. So again, it was a great match. It could have quite easily been a 3-set match. But I agree with both of them that they both were a bit more aggressive, and the level was definitely higher than the match in New York.
What would you say has been a big change in terms of Aryna in this 2-year period? I remember, albeit on TV, watching her in New York saving match points in, I'm going to say, an early round, maybe the third, against Kanepi.
Kanepi, that's right, yes.
Yeah, in New York in August, September 2022. And then, I sometimes reference this. This is just someone from the outside who's observing her matches, casually, if you like. And I've pinpointed that match as a sort of mini turning point, because she ends up having a good run. She's up a break in the third set against Iga that doesn't work out, but then she has a good WTA finals, and then we all know what happened in Australia a year ago, and it's kind of just been upward trajectory ever since, in my opinion. What would you say in the 2 years has been the biggest improvement that you would say in terms of Aryna?
Look, I think the mindset and the ability to turn matches around from those really challenging situations, and I'd say the Coco one as well, the 5-6, 6-5, Coco serving for the set with all the momentum. So that, again, that was a turnaround. The Madison Keys, again, that looked gone. That match looked done and dusted at that point. A straight sets defeat. She managed to turn it around. Obviously the Kanepi one as well. Against Kanepi had traditionally given Aryna a lot of trouble. Just the matchup was awkward. So for her to figure it out there, that's been a big change. I think her ability to adjust to different game styles, that's something that's very pleasing. I know early in the tournament played Anisimova, someone that traditionally gives her a bit of trouble. Just the matchup is awkward. And the team identified it. She identified it, and she again managed to still play her game, but adjust a little bit just to make it a little bit more challenging for Anisimova to do what she had done in the past. So just her ability to be flexible but still be true to herself. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's something I think she's improved. It's not just over the 2-year period. I go back to when we started with them in 2021. I think that's been progressive across the period. And then, and I think I may have mentioned this the first time we spoke. One of the first things Anton said to me when we met, when we started in 2021 was want to start achieving results in Grand Slams. They'd done really well in other tournaments, won lots of events, but just I think hadn't broken a third round at that point at a Grand Slam. So it was all around peaking at the slams was the focus, and that didn't happen overnight. But all the little changes done by I guess everyone in the team. Jason's work was incredible. Anton bringing Andre on as a really quality hitting partner that can mimic most of the WTA players. Amir bringing him on, so everyone's played a little bit of a role to try and get her to be ready to peak at the slams, and I think that's working really well.
I think it is. I mean, semi-finals at all the slams since that New York run in 2022. What match, we've spoken about some of the ones that have given you most pleasure. Which ones in the last sort of 2 to 3 years, either with Ons or with Aryna, have you either found frustrating because of a professional standpoint, because maybe the data you had maybe didn't manifest itself, or something went wrong, or just because it was a crushing defeat for you and all the player?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say definitely the Wimbledon final, I think, with Ons was definitely one that was, hard to watch given the level that Ons was playing to. I think it had beaten Kvitova, Rybakina, had overcome Sabalenka. And then I thought the final was just, and not taking anything away from Vondrousova. She played, she deserves to be Wimbledon champion, but I felt Ons didn't play the level that she had played in the previous rounds. And for me, that I guess the data and the plan, she wasn't able to follow that just because the occasion sort of overwhelmed her. So that one was difficult. The Mukova semi-final where Aryna had match points, I feel that one was one that again it was playing at a really high level. A few things didn't go away, and then it seemed like everything started to snowball out of control, and the ability not to stop that momentum is disappointing. And maybe being in the box that day, I feel as well, was there something better we could have done to identify something, or to slow her down, or change something? So definitely from a professional point of view, I look back at that match going, was there something I could have done better? At this Australian Open, I think Emil Ruusuvuori, 2 sets up against Daniel Medvedev, he had 2 points away from the match. Again, something where we go really, really, really close to winning, but then not getting the result is disappointing. I don't want to say frustrating, but definitely disappointing because it would have made a huge difference in their career and their season.
Absolutely. I was looking at coming to the men's final. Actually, I was looking at the box of Medvedev as it was kind of slipping away from him over the match on Sunday. And have you ever felt this? And maybe you felt it in that semi-final with Sabalenka and Mukova, where you're almost powerless because of whether it be, I think, with Medvedev at the weekend, physical or just the momentum. It's such a big thing in tennis. And did you feel a bit maybe like, I don't really know what we can say or do here because things are just slipping away, and Mukova was playing so solid in those last 3 or 4 games?
Yeah, definitely felt a little bit, but maybe there's a bit of me as well thinking she just needs to get one game. Like even at 5-all, if she can just hold and take it to a third set tiebreak, I just felt there was still a chance. And I think she was 40-15 in one of those games as well. I can't remember if I'm remembering that right, but so I felt there was a bit of hope even on match point before she ended up losing. I felt helpless, I guess, in the fifth set of Medvedev Ruusuvuori because I think Emil had started cramping towards the middle of the third set and did incredibly well in the fourth set to manage it and get really close to winning. But then by the fifth set, you felt helpless because there's nothing that I think you could have given to stop that deterioration in the physical side. So the final set was going to be pretty tough. So that one I felt really helpless. But I would say definitely the Mukova one felt we could have still influenced that better. I could have maybe picked out a few things, but I think in the moment as well, where we've got a little bit of pressure that we're dealing with to try and work out what do we communicate in a moment like that as well, when the athlete's maybe a little bit frustrated and not as receptive to feedback as well.
What about the future, Shane? Where are we looking with you? And do you want to take more players on board, or you think that you've got your players that you've highlighted already, and that's where you're going with this, or what's the thinking there?
Yeah, so we're actually starting to put together a team. I've got a few analysts now working in my team. Some are ex-players, more coming in from the coaching angle, but upskilling in the data space. Some of the other way, but built a team to now, and we took on a number of new players this Australian Open. We've developed a mobile app, which is almost a self-sufficient tool for a coach, so they can use DDSA services, but they don't have someone like in my position to do the analysis for them. They've got the data, they've got it presented in a nice way, and the coach can self-analyze the matchups. And so we've got an option like that. So we can work with coaches like that. They can work under a similar model to a Jabeur and Sabalenka, where we're part of the team. And then, we've got a few different, as I said, analysts in a similar role to me that work with other players. And we're if there's demand, we'll build our team. So if there's more players that want to come and work with us, we're more than happy to, and I'll just make sure I get the right people in my team to be able to give them a high quality sort of service.
Sure. One more for you, just looking at the year ahead for the three players you've highlighted, which will obviously have various different goals. Ons has had maybe a slightly disappointing start to the year, but there's hopefully bigger and better things to come, obviously with the French Open and Wimbledon maybe in particular, but the clay court season and grass court season in general. Sabalenka, I mean, I spoke to her in Berlin last year and given her all court game, and the fact that she's getting to semis and finals on a regular basis at all the Grand Slams over the last, almost 2-year period. The world is her oyster. And then there's obviously Emil, who you touched upon, who was very close to knocking out the eventual finalist in Daniil Medvedev, and we all know about him being a hard court specialist. What's the sort of thinking with these three players with this year ahead?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with Ons. I think, she had a later preseason just to try and get over some of the injuries and concerns. So she didn't actually have a lead-up event. And then when you don't have a lead-up event and you're playing a very high-quality teenager that's match fit, match ready, it was going to be tough. Obviously, the result wasn't as expected. We didn't expect that sort of scoreline, but understand that.
Do you sort of learn something from that match, Shane? As maybe disappointing as the result was, maybe you can often learn quite a bit from that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on a lot of the key KPIs that we have for Ons, she was below. So we understand that she wasn't match ready. Also got to credit Mira. She played an unbelievable match as well. So there was two parts to that, but certainly the parts that I think we can control. I know Issam, Karim, they've gone back. She's been training almost every day since she got back. So they're working on fixing that. Understand that when you don't have a full preseason, some of these things that they couldn't work on, they're now working on post the Australian Open. So again, the aim for her is to try and get match fit, play these sort of Middle Eastern events. Because she feels like she's got a great home support crowd there to do well there, and then Indian Wells, Miami, and then, as you said, launch into the clay and grass seasons where she's traditionally had really good results. If I move to Emil, he started the year really well. Finally in Hong Kong, again beat some good players, getting there, lost to Rublev, and then the Medvedev one was for me, a light bulb moment for him. I think at a slam to show that he can play against one of the guys that would have been on the top 3 or 4 favorites to win the tournament, just to show that the level is there. So yeah, he's just got to build on that, and I think he'll take more positives than negatives from that result, and yeah, I'm really expecting some really good things for him this year, working to try and get that ranking into that top 30 bracket if you can. And then with Aryna, you don't want to put any pressure, but yeah, I think any event she enters, she'll feel like she's got the game to win it. And I know the team knows there's things to work on, and they'll keep adding things and getting her ready to perform against different players on different surfaces. So I think she's going to keep working, and hopefully she can put herself in positions to be competitive at all the slams.
Cool. Thanks, Shane, for coming on board today, and I'm sure we'll catch up with you very soon. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.